Hi everyone, welcome to today's webinar, Optimize Your Print Quality and Process with Data-Driven Insights. Presenting today is Mark Verbist, Director of Business Development. I'm Robert Grotans, the Global Experience Manager, and I'll be moderating today's webinar. If you have any questions at any time during this webinar, please feel free to submit them in the space provided. We'll have some time at the very end of this webinar to answer a few of your questions. This webinar will also be recorded and you will receive a link afterwards so that you can review the webinar again at your convenience. So with that, I will turn it over to Mark to kick things off.
Thank you, Robert. Hello, everyone. Let me start with a question. Have you ever wondered where you and your company might be in 3 to 5 years' time, especially in today's trying or challenging economy? And would it surprise you when I state that, for example, on a wide web flexo or gravure press, you can save up to 30% of material cost and press downtime during make ready? Imagine what that means in terms of cost saving for you. And would it surprise you when I would state that on an HP Indigo press, you can print a consistent quality of Delta E2 or lower, and that managing color drift takes less than 1 minute? Imagine what that would do to your productivity. Today, I will share some insights, some typical challenges of our printing industry, and the significance of data-driven process optimization. We're all looking for more productivity. We're all looking for more production efficiency. And that's exactly what this webinar is going to be about. So let's look at this data-driven approach. On last Drupa, on the X-Rite and Pantone booth, there was a survey done amongst the visitors, and this is the result of this survey. And I would like to highlight the top 4 results of concerns that our visitors had in the 3 to 5 years from now. And the first one, the top ranked, was maybe a little bit surprising, was really about the skills of the operators. Operators are becoming older and older, and a lot of the knowledge and experience is disappearing. So there is a real concern among you all about how am I going to overcome or compensate the drain of experience and knowledge. A second topic was about the environmental sustainability. We all know that many brand owners have in their core strategies a lot of focus on improving the environment and coming up with a packaging that is more environmentally friendly. So that is a second placed concern that you all have. In the third place, there is, of course, the economical, the financial aspect of things, the compressed margins because energy prices go up, substrates and material costs go up. And that is a real challenge moving forward. And then last, and maybe not least, because of the changes in the environment and because of the changes in consumer behavior and buying behavior, especially in the FMCG or consumer packed goods market, these changes require that people from the printing industry adapt to these changes. So this is really an eye-opener maybe. These 4 concerns will be kind of the foundation of this presentation. And the good thing is, of course, that when we look at the press room and we are able to optimize your press room, the productivity, reducing costs, that would help you to overcome some of these challenges. And what does that do? A press room that is optimized. An optimized press room, of course, frees up operating expenses. You will have less ink leftovers. You will reduce your make-ready time. You will understand your machinery better, your existing printing presses better, so you know better what you can promise to your customers or not. And it also helps you to transition more to automation and integration when you have less skilled employees or when production time is under pressure, then you need more optimization and more automation and more integration. It of course helps also to reduce the company risk, the increasing energy consumption, the cost of substrates, the substrate supply is reduced. So all of that is a challenge, and with a press room that is optimized, you are able to overcome these risks. And then a third aspect that is important is that you can, with an optimized press room, better penetrate new markets. You understand your current process better. You can adapt better to changes in the market. And then we're talking about extended color gamut, transitioning from conventional to digital, for example, because of shorter print runs. Understanding your print process, optimizing your press room will help you to overcome these three challenges. At the end of last year, X-Rite acquired MeasureColor, and this puts X-Rite now in a position to really be there, controlling your color, optimizing your process, starting from pre-press all the way down to the printing room and the press room. With our partners ESCO, with new technologies like Otura, communicating with brand owners via the ColorSort technology, and then now in the press room. For press room optimization, now we can use MeasureColor. So what can you expect further in this presentation? We will talk about MeasureColor production and MeasureColor reports. Those are the two products in the MeasureColor technology portfolio. MeasureColor production that helps your press operator at the printing press, and MeasureColor reports that is then more for operational management to analyze your data, to look for trends. Where is my process going right? Where am I maybe losing money in my process, and how can I then improve my process? Is very much driven from MeasureColor reports as an application. And then last but not least is how MeasureColor, I will show you how MeasureColor can be implemented in workflows, in existing workflows, so that it fits in whatever you already have invested in. So let's look at MeasureColor production first. When we talk about MeasureColor, it's of course about measuring color. And with MeasureColor, you can measure spots, individual color patches, you can measure color bars, you can measure inside the image area. And all of this you can do during your make-ready, during print production, but also during quality assurance. And for offset digital flex or previewer, any printing technology is supported in the MeasureColor software. Now, measuring color, you may say, that is something that I already do for quite some time. I have my spectrophotometer and I can measure my color patches. Sometimes I use my measuring device like an Exact2 to scan a color bar and I have my measurement results. So why or where is MeasureColor different? Let me tell you a small story about where MeasureColor started. Eric Koldenhoff is one of the founding fathers of MeasureColor and still the driving force behind the MeasureColor technology. And in his early days, he used to be a consultant, optimizing printing processes especially for offset printers in those days. And from all the color science and all the color scientific knowledge that Eric had, he in the beginning was using Excel, and afterwards he started programming a little bit, and he started with his first version of MeasureColor, which was very scientifically based, like many other applications these days still are. And then he was standing in an offset press next to an operator showing these fancy graphs and spectral curves and everything. And the operator said, "Look, guy," and it was in the Netherlands, so the person was very direct. And he said, "I'm not a color scientist. I have a plus and a minus on my dashboard. Please tell me what to do." And that's really where MeasureColor started. So with the focus of what the operator needs, and regardless which printing technology you have, focusing on the need of the operator and building or bringing the color science in a box, but offering the press operator a user-friendly user interface. When you're on offset press, you will scan a color bar with ink zones, and we will display in MeasureColor the different separations, so the different ink units on your printing press, and a visualization of the ink zones, so that the operator, in one big overview, can now see which of the ink keys need to be adapted or changed, and which of the ink is, which of the colors, which of the ink is okay and is correct. Yeah. With the offset application, we can connect to closed loop systems. You can do dot gain corrections. So there's a lot of information and a lot of features hidden under these buttons. But what I would like to focus on today is the simplicity of the user interface. Now, when we move to Flexo and Gravure, the user interface changes. Still the same product, still MeasureColor, but the user interface changes. You're not scanning an ink zoned color bar at that point. You're scanning a smaller color bar, as you see here below on the screen, a smaller color bar with solids and dot gains. And we show the operator in one nice overview everything that he needs to know. The outcome of the solids, the outcome of the dot gain, and in the middle of the screen, a set of icons. And I've enlarged that on the left-hand side, bottom side of this slide. We use 3 icons because at the end of the day, there are not so many options on a printing press to change. Either the ink is good, and then we show that with a green check mark, or there's an issue. And we show a yellow triangle when there is a density issue. And whether you want to call it density or strength or intensity, doesn't really matter. But you need more ink on the substrate or less ink on the substrate. At the end of the day, it means the ink is good, only the ink transfer is not high or low enough. And we have a third icon, which shows the operator a stop sign. Based on the best match technology that we have built in, we can calculate whether the ink that is in the press, or at least the ink, how the ink was printed on the substrate, whether that ink is a good ink or a bad ink. And when it's a bad ink, we can calculate whether, with increasing or decreasing your density, more ink transferred on the substrate or less ink transferred on the substrate, you will get into the delta E tolerance that is required. And when that is not the case, we say stop, don't try, don't waste your time, move to Ink Kitchen, move to a different ink recipe, go for a recipe adjustment, regardless what the reason is. So very easy to use interface. This actually saves a lot of time on the printing press and removes the trial and error. Now, maybe you're on a printing press and one of the examples is corrugated board printing, where you do not scan a color bar, but you just have a couple of color patches that you want to measure. In this case, 4 color patches. You spot measure these color patches with your spectrophotometer, and your user interface shows a very nice overview, the result of the 4 colors. The 2 colors on the left-hand side are okay, the green check mark. The 2 colors on the right-hand side, you need to go back to Ink Kitchen. Don't try making them lighter or darker. The software has calculated, the color engine behind has calculated that it is impossible to reach the required result. And then for the HP Indigo, for digital processes, we have a different user interface. Again, same MeasureColor production product, different user interface, where we show a traffic light. On an HP Indigo, for example, you cannot increase or decrease the ink very easily. We show a traffic light. When it's green, that means that your press, your HP Indigo, is still printing according to the calibrated state. When this traffic light would show up red, then there is a problem. There is a difference between the way that the press is printing now and the calibrated state, the fingerprinted state. And the only thing that the operator needs to do is push the magic green button here. It says optimize color on press. And what it actually does, it calculates a dot gain compensation curve, sends it automatically to your HP Indigo, and you can reprint the job or start your production in the calibrated state. This takes like less than a minute. So you see, very simple user interface, one color engine, different user interfaces depending on the printing technology or the application that you're using. So let's look at MeasureColor reports. MeasureColor reports is the tool for management, the tool where you are looking at data, looking at trends, and try to optimize based on these trends and based on what you learn from the data, optimize your process and improve that process. Let's show this graph where the horizontal line is the color target and the green zone is the delta E tolerance. When we print for customers, and customers define what the color is, and you agree with the customer what the color target, what the color tolerance should be. But typically when you start a job, printing a job, the job will be out of that tolerance. You need to correct for that color. And that's what each red dot here on the graph represents. You're outside of tolerance, the operator at the printing press needs to take action, stop the printing press, take out the sheet, add the ink, change an analogs, change the viscosity in your ink, increase the plus and the minus densities on this offset console. But every time that the operator needs to make corrective actions, you are actually losing money. Your productivity is lower and you're creating waste, therefore you're losing money. And of course, the whole idea is to eliminate or reduce the red zones so that you can start your job much closer to the desired color target and hopefully, in many cases, inside of the tolerance area. And all is based on data, on measurements. So when the operator is motivated to take measurements on a printing press, either spot measurements or color bar measurements, when the operator finds that MeasureColor production is a good tool at the printing press to get the job done, then at the same time, the operator is collecting all the information you need to have a good view on your process, to analyze your data, to analyze your process, and to find root cause analysis to find the solution to the problems that you may have. And MeasureColor reports is what I would like to show you now is a set of examples of MeasureColor reports. A MeasureColor reports is actually a big database where all these files come in, the measurement jobs, the measurements that belong to these jobs, and you can analyze the data. This is an example where we show from all the data that we have, we show for each printing press how the printing press is running. Each vertical color block is a measurement, can be spot measurements, can be scan measurements, and each triangle is the start of a job. And in one overview, I can see now that in my press room, where I have 3 presses, press number 2, that the guys at the printing press are really struggling. They're not reaching the required print quality. So since this is live data, I could click on one of those color bars. I could dive into the measurements. I could call the guys and say, I'll be there in 5 minutes or in half an hour. I will help you to see what's going on and hopefully maybe help you to get the score up. So this is what we call the print room dashboard, but you could also look at a calendar. Imagine entering the press room on a Monday morning. You can actually call up this production calendar of last week and you see what they produced over the weekend. And each of these colored tabs is a card, and the card shows you the job, the score of the job, on which press it ran, how many measurements, and at what time. This green card here shows that you have 13 measurements. It was printed at 10:30 in the evening on a Saturday, and you're scoring 83%. When you click on that, when you click on one of those cards, it will show you a job scorecard. So it's a very dynamic database, a dynamic engine where you can click on certain elements in your reports and dive deeper in the information. When you can dive deeper in the information, then you can learn what is happening on a job, on an ink, on a substrate, with the printing press, and et cetera, et cetera. I can also look at a spot color ink analysis. You're printing a lot of spot colors, and maybe you want to understand which of these spot colors are we bringing to press in a correct way. So I'm calling up here the spot color ink analysis. It's a list of colors that we're printing with the worst result on top and the best ones on all the way on the bottom. I have here a blue ink, I've got a brown ink and a beige ink that didn't pass. When I click on that blue ink, for example, I would like to understand better what's happening with this blue ink. When I click on this blue ink, I dive a level deeper. And it shows me a radar plot, as we call that. And on the right-hand side, you see the relationship between your density or ink density and the delta E. But what I also see here is when you look at the 2 clusters in the radar plot or the 2 V shapes in the delta E to density graph, it shows me that we are using 2 different ink formulations. This is very interesting information because you understand that when only 75% of the colors are in tolerance, and in general they're too cyan, too dull, so that information you can see from the radar plot, you understand that the press operator here is spending time on correcting for the intensity, but at the same time, the result, the visual result of what you have printed is going to be different. So this is very important information to look at how you're creating your inks. Why is this? You can look at their ink recipes, and your information will help you and educate you on how your process is running today. I have one last example in MeasureColor reports. When you scan a color bar, and you would have in that color bar your solids and your dot gain information, you could extract or you can filter that information in tints 25, 50, 75%. The color bar in this example also has some gray balance patches. You can show the trend over 110, 112 different jobs. And this shows the dot gain trend in 25, 50, 75%. But when I look down, and this is of course a presentation slide, but when I scroll down, I have some more information about my dot gain. And it shows me on average my cyan, magenta, yellow, and black, and my delta percentage in 25, 50, and 75%. And it shows me that on average, over that period of time, what I'm showing these 110, 112 jobs, I'm showing that I'm on average in 25%, 5% too high, 7% too high in the 50%, and in the 75, 3.7% too high. So this helps me to understand that I could work with my compensation curve on my plate to make sure that my yellow is not overprinting a little bit, and that my gray balance of my images that I'm printing is going to be more stable and better. So you see, MeasureColor Reports is an enormously powerful tool to deep dive in the data of your process, and based on that process, it helps you to improve it and to learn from it at least. Let's jump to the last part of this webinar, and that's the workflow integration. Your press room is not an island. You are in contact, or the press room is connected to your customers, where the color targets come from. You have maybe a pre-press workflow. You have an ERP system. You have an ink kitchen. You need to report out to some brand owners, maybe, or you have multiple press rooms in your group where you would like to exchange information and data. You have connections to tooling companies to make your plates and your cylinders. So a press room is not an island on its own. Therefore, the tool that you want to use as a press side monitoring tool like MeasureColor should be integratable in your existing workflow. And that is exactly what MeasureColor can do for you. Let's focus on two aspects of that. The color targets. We do a lot of optimizations projects, or we're training a lot of customers. And what we very often notice is that finding the right color target is in many companies a challenge. And it can be ICC profiles, it can be spot colors, but typically there is sometimes of a specific brand color, there are maybe 20 or 30 different versions available. Question is, which one is the right one? So MeasureColor, because it can integrate in that complete workflow, MeasureColor can become your single source of truth in combination with Pantone, Pantone Live, and the Private Library Manager, for example. But it is important that in MeasureColor, or with MeasureColor, you create a central place where all your color targets are available. And then, of course, hopefully, just one version of that brand owner color. When you have OpenColor, GMG OpenColor, you can connect to the database of OpenColor, and the digital targets that you're using for proofing are then shared inside of MeasureColor. And in MeasureColor at the printing press, you're using the same color targets as the ones that you used during making of the digital proofs. We can link MeasureColor to Kitchen. Either you search for a spot color on during your make ready time when a customer is on the presser side. That information, that measurement can be shared to Ink Kitchen as the new color target. But of course, the inks that you create in your ink formulation can also be shared with MeasureColor. I would like to talk a little bit about workflow optimization. We have the possibility to automatically set up jobs. We use XML technology for that. So if you have an ESCO workflow or a hybrid Cloudflow workflow, We can, with XML, all the information that is already available in prepress, information about your file, the inks that the colors that you're using, the sequence of the inks, the metadata of customer and customer requirements, all of that information is already available in your environment. We can use this information via XML to create the jobs that MeasureColor need. The operator at the printing press doesn't have to do that. Via XML, the MeasureColor jobs are created automatically. The only thing that the press operator needs to do is either type in a production number and he calls up all the information automatically so that he knows what he needs to do. Or he takes his barcode scanner, scans the barcode that is maybe on the job jacket of the job that he needs to produce, and the job is created automatically in the background. So the advantage of that is maybe twofold. On the one hand, the operator doesn't lose any time typing in customer name and requirements. But on the other hand, the operator cannot make any mistake, because not only the customer information and the color target is there, but also the delta E requirement is there, and also the what we call measuring condition is there. How should the measuring device be set? Is it M0? Is it M1? Is it D50? All of that, the setting of the measuring device is already defined in the MeasureColor job. The operator doesn't have to waste any time on it, and he knows exactly what is required of him. We can integrate MeasureColor with your ERP system and your MIS system. So if you do not have a workflow, a pre-press workflow from MeasureColor Hybrid, we could still use XML to build an automatic job setup workflow based on your ERP or MIS system that you have. And from MeasureColor reports and from MeasureColor production, you can share data. MeasureColor production connects to color search, so you can send data from MeasureColor directly into the color search scorecard server of your brand owner. You can share MeasureColor reports information with your customers. You can share information between your different production plants. So it shows that MeasureColor is the centerpiece of your organization and connecting like a spider web with all the different peripherals that you may have in your environment. Now, let's look at very quickly maybe two examples of a return on investment. We're talking about process optimization, and this comes at a cost. But we have to not look at the cost, we should look at the return on investment. And this information, these two examples, this is based on real life information. So the first one I want to share with you is a calculation model that we have for wide wave flexo and gravure, where on the left-hand side, the client introduces some information about their operation, the number of presses, the number of jobs, the number of stops that they have. And on the right-hand side, the customer would enter, okay, if I'm going on this journey for process optimization, what do I need? I need MeasureColor. There is a cost for that. I need maybe some internal people that I have to free up. Maybe that also has a cost. Maybe I'm relying on some external people. How many days? Maybe 5 days. Maybe I do not have the proper measuring devices. So I'm here adding 6 new measuring devices with scan-capable measuring devices. So that sums up to 76,000 euros. That's a significant amount of money. Now, where is the return? And the return is here in this 0.5 stops. So the whole idea is when you invest in MeasureColor and you invest in process optimization, where is the saving? And the saving is in the number of stops that you save. And the calculation that we typically use is every 2 jobs, you save 1 stop. So that's a very conservative approach that we take here. Every second job, you save one stop. So we enter here 0.5. And for this organization, that represented a total cost saving for make ready of 17%. And on top of that, a productivity increase of 4%. And that's how to look at it. When you can save about 500,000 euro, you have to invest 75,000 euro. This sounds like a very good deal to me. Now let's look at where is the return on investment for your HP Indigo workflows. So before MeasureColor, so when you're not using MeasureColor, you would use your production machines to do press recalibration. You would use them for color management to find the right spot color combination of CMYK OGV, because all of your spot colors are a build of CMYK OGV. Maybe when the color on press is not good, you move back to prepress and say, correct my file, and then I will reprint it again. All of the actions take, it's all possible, no worries there, but it takes a lot of time. Anywhere between 15 minutes and 1 hour to either find your colors or to correct for colors or to compensate for color drifts. With MeasureColor on the HP Indigo, we can compensate for color drift in less than a minute, and finding the right spot color in an OGV and CMYK OGV combination is done in prepress, but not on a production machine, because your production machine is there to produce. And if you can maximize the uptime of your production machine, then you have process efficiency. You see? So this ends my presentation here for today. And I hope it has become clear that when you understand your process better, that you are better armed for the challenges that you face. And based on the survey that we did during the last Drupa, knowing that there are some areas that are a big concern of you, with MeasureColor, you can actually free up operating expenses, reduce company risk, and look for new opportunities in the market. Thank you for your attention. And if you have any questions, please let me know.
Thank you, Mark. Yes, we do have some time for a few questions now. If you have a question that you haven't submitted yet, please feel free to do so now. So I do see some questions coming in. Let's see, here is one. Can I import the data from my old IQC into MeasureColor?
The answer is yes. With MeasureColor in the reference manager, we can import various file formats. So the reference manager, as I said during the presentation, connects to external databases, Pantone Live, but we can also import data. We can import ICC profiles, for example. When you make a fingerprint of your for your printing press, we can import the ICC profile or the measurements as a CCATS file. But we can also import in MeasureColor the CXF. And in that way, you can actually import information or color targets that you have from your legacy software packages. Maybe one piece of advice there, if you have legacy software, an older software, and you want to transition these color targets into MeasureColor, maybe this is a good time to critically look at what is the information that I have in my old database, and do I really want all of this information blindly transferred into my MeasureColor? And maybe the answer here is, let's be careful. Let's look at how your color targets are organized and which color targets you have, and then selectively build your new single source of color truth in a MeasureColor database or in Pantone Live for that matter. Yeah. So short answer, yes, we can do it. A little bit longer answer, this is maybe a good opportunity to critically look at what you have and see how you can transition that efficiently.
Great. Here's another. How long does an integration and optimization process typically take?
Oof, that's not an easy one. I think that optimizing a process is not a sprint. It's more like a journey. When I represent this ROI, what we typically see is that these ROIs start kicking in after, let's say, like 4, maybe 6 months. And why is that? Because you have transformed your organization a little bit. It's a slightly different way of working. You're implementing new tools, so there is a little bit of a learning curve. And before all of that is settled in, then we're 4 months down the road. But it is continuous improvement. With MeasureColor, you have the tools to continuously work on your operators, how they're dealing with all the elements at the printing press. And at the same time, you have the tools to look at your process and to analyze and monitor and improve. So it is a journey, and it is a journey that maybe never stops, but it at least helps you to adopt to changes in the market, to become a better company, changes in terms of technology, and an ongoing process is actually the way to look at it, I think.
You mentioned extended color gamut. How can MeasureColor help move to extended color gamut?
Interesting question. What we see is that more and more brand owners understand the sustainability impact of extended color gamut. With extended color gamut, you set up your press with your 7 colors. You can run multiple jobs after one another without cleaning the press. So in terms of ink leftovers, in terms of cleaning material and cleaning solvents, for example, it has a big impact on the environment. So we know of several brand owners that are starting to ask that print work is being done in extended color gamut because of the environment impact. How can MeasureColor help? How can MeasureColor help then this transition to extended color gamut? You can only move to extended color gamut provided you have your dot gain and gray balance under control. And you cannot transition, at least that's the experience that we have, you cannot transition from conventional to extended color gamut if you do not know how your production today is running and how stable or unstable your dot gain is. So my recommendation would be use a press side tool like MeasureColor. Scan MeasureColor bars, including dot gain and the gray balance. Monitor how you're doing. And I've shown you during the presentation an example of MeasureColor reports where you had seen this trend of dot gain. See how consistent or inconsistent and stable your dot gain is. And if it is not, fix that first before moving to extended color gamut. But once you've moved to extended color gamut, continue to monitor that dot gain consistency. Because the dot gain consistency will or is a representation of how your images are being printed, but also how your spot colors are being printed, because the spot color is also a combination of CMYK OGV.
I'm going to take one more question. Before I take that question, I just wanted to let everyone know Immediately after this webinar, we will display a short polling question. If you are interested in speaking to someone to learn more about MeasureColor or just to get a demo, please feel free to answer it, and we will be happy to connect you with an expert. So please stay on for that. So the last question I have for today, I have a setup with multiple presses of different models and ages. Is MeasureColor usable on older presses?
The answer is yes. The answer is yes. And I think that MeasureColor has a big advantage when you have a mixed environment, because when you have a mixed environment, typically either the press comes with some on-press software. But the advantage of running all your presses with MeasureColor, or at least have these presses controlled by MeasureColor, it helps you, or it allows you to collect information from these different printing technologies and different printing presses, all in one database, looking at the data in the same way. And so that's about the mixed environment. But when you then have an older printing press, the better you understand how that press can still function, the more it becomes clear to you for what jobs you can still use it. And maybe it is not for the highest quality work that you can use that. Or maybe that is not the right press to move to extended color gamut because of the dot gain variation that you may have on that press. But there is maybe you can still make good use of an older press, provided you understand what is capable and what is not possible on that printing press.
Perfect. Thank you, Mark. Thanks everyone for joining today. Thank you for your time. I want to remind everyone that we will send out a recording to this session that will most likely be sent out tomorrow. If we didn't get to your question, we will follow up with you. And again, that poll question will be displayed immediately after this recording ends. So just please stay on for that if you want someone to follow up with you. So thank you, everyone, and have a great rest of your day.